Good evening. If you'll lend me your ear, I would like to talk to you for a few minutes about summaries, specifically how to write a good summary and why you should want to write a good summary. So first of all, there's really kind of four main guidelines you should follow when writing a summary. And the first among these is that you want to cover the whole text. Right? So you want to cover the text from beginning, middle, and end, delineating all the key points of the text. If it's an argument, you want to lay out all of the pivotal points of that argument. If it's a story, you want to hit all of the key plot points of that story. Every time there's every time the character's arch hinges upward or downward, you want to hit all of those key points. Whatever kind of a text you might be following, the key thing is to delineate all of the major points, all of the major turns in the shape of the text. You also want to maintain constant neutrality when writing a summary. You don't want to frame it in a way that is evaluating the text or inserting your own argument in any way. You want to try to maintain a wording that reflects the author's original intention. So that doesn't mean that you have to remove the author's argument. You want to maintain the author's argument, but you shouldn't manipulate the author's thoughts through your own words. You shouldn't word it in such a way that it twists the argument away from the author's intent. Which is a very difficult thing to do because language is inherently biased. But that's a whole other topic. But for our purposes here, you want to be as neutral as possible, maintaining the author's original intention. You want to stay neutral in that regard, neutral in your delivery. A summary is just a method of delivery. And it's also about presenting a condensed version of the material in your own words, right? So you don't want to quote the author throughout. If there's some really specific phrase, you might quote the author on that. But for the most part, you're putting this in your own words, and you're making it significantly shorter than the original text, the original piece. If it's not shorter, it's not really serving its purpose. Because again, it's a method of delivery. And if it's the same size, you're not making it any more deliverable than the original text itself. So it's kind of pointless if it's not significantly shorter. It needs to be significantly shorter, and it should be in your own words for reasons that we will talk about momentarily. Finally, the fourth guideline that you should follow is to not add anything, which kind of goes hand in hand with maintaining neutrality, but it's a little bit different in that maintaining neutrality has a lot to do with not manipulating the words or rephrasing things in a different way. Whereas the idea of not adding anything means that you shouldn't, even clearly state your own opinion. You shouldn't, don't add anything that the author did not say. So if you're writing a summary of the 1619 project, say, you wouldn't want to put something in there like I fully agree with Hannah Jones's argument that the American Revolution happened largely because of slavery. However, you want to just deliver her thoughts, right? A summary is not the place to insert your own opinion. You need to keep that out. And there's a good reason for that, which we will get to in a moment as well. But let's quickly have a look at this little demo that I made. Now, I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but I'm just going to put it up on the screen and make a few comments about it. And it'll be in the weekly folder, and you can read it on your own time if you want to sample. All right, so here it is. So I've done a demo for you, a demo summary of Nikole Hannah Jones's Introduction to the 1619 Project. You, of course, will be doing it for Sherry Turkle's Stop Googling, Let's Talk. But this is just to provide you a demo, kind of a sample format that you might want to follow. This is by no means a perfect summary in terms of the wording is not super polished. I just did this really quickly last night, just to give you an idea of the kind of thing you should be shooting for. So if you look at it, so the first thing when I said about writing this is I kind of envisioned the piece, Nikole Hannah-Jones's essay, in three different parts. There's the first part where she tells the personal anecdote about her father and the flag, and then introduces this conflict within herself of reconciling American patriotism with the evils surrounding race and slavery in this country. And then she goes through this kind of historical exposition where she's approaching American history from obviously the specific angle of African American history and its inextricable ties to slavery. And then I thought of it as this kind of third part where she winds down and reconciles African American culture as American culture, and ends with this personal anecdote again. She bookends it with these personal anecdotes about the flags and how she wishes she could have gone back and chose the American flag as the representation of her ancestral identity, right? So before I started writing it, I thought of it in three different sections. And that's a really useful thing. As you go about writing your own summary, for the first one and then the second one that you're going to write, you might want to do a reverse outline first. That could be really helpful for you. Take 10, 15 minutes to go through each paragraph and pull out all of the main ideas, and then group those main ideas into sections. That could be a really useful way to go about this. And then you turn those sections, those sections then become your paragraphs, basically, for your summary. So that's something that I would recommend. Do a reverse outline, pull out the main point of every paragraph, and then cordon off those main points into different sections, and those can be your paragraphs. But you want to get all of the main points. In terms of neutrality, if you read this, you'll see that as closely as I could, I held to Nikole Hannah-Jones's argument. I didn't say if I disagreed with anything or if I agreed with anything. I didn't put that in there. There's no I think this or I think that, or although Nikole Hannah-Jones asserts so and so, yet I believe, or I would argue, I assert the opposite, or anything like that. I've carried forth her argument in my own words. I attributed it to her once and twice, right? So especially in this context, you don't have to start every paragraph off. So you're doing it for Turkle, right? So you don't need to start every paragraph. Turkle says, Turkle asserts, Turkle argues. No. Maybe say it once at the beginning just for form, but then you don't need to say the author's name again. It's obvious. Now, if I was doing a summary within a paper, there might be certain instances, especially if it's a long summary, and especially if it's presenting a viewpoint that is particularly contrary to my own, then in those cases, I might repeat the author's name a little bit more, just to really highlight that distinction between my voice and their voice. But you don't need to do that in this context. There will be nothing surrounding the summary that you turn into me via Blackboard. So there's no reason to keep highlighting whose voice is whose. I know that what this should be is you presenting the author's argument and your own words. So there's no reason to keep pointing that out to me. It just becomes filler. And it's actually, a summary can become very difficult if you use a lot of filler words. You want to keep it tight, clean, only what matters, only what is essential. You should only use the words essential to delivering the main points of the author's argument, of the author's thought. And you'll see that this is significantly shorter than Nikole Hannah-Jones's original essay. I got it down to just below 500 words with the title. This document gets up to 500 words, but you can see there it's just under 500 words. You'll be doing 250 to 500 words. However, for this first one, Sherry Turkle's essay is much shorter than Nikole Hannah-Jones's essay, so you'll have a bit of an easier time with staying below the word limit. But the main thing is it's a lot shorter, right? It's a more deliverable package. I haven't introduced any other texts. I haven't referenced anything else outside of what she references. I haven't contradicted her. I haven't highlighted my agreement with her. All I've done is delivered her own thoughts in my own words in a nice deliverable package. And you can go and read that, and I suggest that you do as you prepare to write your own. And you might ask yourself, well, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to write a summary? Why would I want to rehash an author's thoughts in my own words? The author has already written it. And that's a very fair question. And there's a couple of reasons that you might want to do it. One reason is to demonstrate comprehension of a text. In your own writing or in discourse, in the case of a classroom, as you're doing for this assignment, a large reason, apart from learning how to write summaries for other reasons, one of the main reasons you're writing this summary and the next one is to demonstrate to me that you comprehend the text fully in its entirety. And you're able to see the shape of the thing, see its main points. But there's a deeper, more valuable reason. In academic writing, you want to be able to introduce the voices that you have researched into your own writing. And this will be even more important in 10-12. But for the papers that follow in this class, you're going to be writing about texts, right? And you want to be able to introduce the voices of those texts into your own. So summarizing creates a vehicle to carry another author's voice into your own text. And it allows for their voice to be merged with your own. It's shorter, so it fits in easier. There's no way you could go through Nikole Hannah-Jones's entire text and put the whole thing into your own text and then respond to it. It's just creating a bridge from another author's text to connect that, to bring it into the text that you are creating so that you can engage with that text, so that you can respond to it, so that you can so that you can use it to support your own argument, or so you can show your disagreement with it and explain why. And once you've delivered the whole shape of that text, that gives you something manageable to confront, to talk with, to have a dialogue with. And that's really what it's all about, is creating a dialogue in your text. Now, sometimes you might want to summarize a whole text. Sometimes you might want to summarize a whole book. You can talk about it in a text. A lot of times, though, you might just be summarizing a couple of paragraphs, and that still counts as a summary. And that will probably, for most of you, for the kind of writing that you'll be doing over the next few years, that'll be as often as not when summary will come in useful, will come in handy, is when you're summarizing a part of a text, right? But even if you're just summarizing a few paragraphs, it's still about getting the main ideas of those paragraphs, all of the main ideas of the paragraphs that matter, so that you're creating this tangible shape, a vehicle for dialogue. It still has to remain neutral. Now, when you're inserting it into your own text, the summary itself should still remain neutral. You shouldn't put words in the author's mouth. And if you do, that only weakens your own argument. You want to present the author's thoughts into your own writing as the author intended them to be presented, more or less. And then you can engage with those thoughts, and then you can challenge them, or then you can reaffirm them. You can use them to reaffirm your own. But you want the author's intentions to be presented honestly. And that's really important. And you'll still, even if you're doing just a few paragraphs, you still want it to be significantly shorter than the original paragraphs. Again, that's part of the point of creating a deliverable package for another author's voice to be brought into your own writing, so that you can engage in a dialogue with that author and in an efficient and realistic way. One more quick note, we'll be talking about this a bit more down the road, but it's important to make a distinction between summary, paraphrasing, and direct quotation. So just quickly what that means, summary is everything we've just laid out. It covers the text in its entirety, but it's a significantly condensed version of it in your own words. Paraphrase is when you're using a much smaller passage from a text. And the difference is that a paraphrase is in your own words, but it's approximately the same length as the passage that you are referencing. And it's in your own words. So it's not really a condensed version, but it's in your own words. So summary, condensed in your own words, paraphrase, matches up, but in your own words. And then finally you have direct quotation, which is word for word the same, which is that's for very small portions of a text, when you're quoting a sentence or 2 or 3 sentences, something like that, something very small, word for word. More on that later. That's it for now. Focus on the summary, and as always, good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. And good night, good morning, good afternoon, and everything in between.